Now, to understand what Packer is, we first need to understand what a virtual machine image is. Now, a virtual machine is a snapshot, or the virtual machine image is a snapshot of an operating system that's running on a computer, and it contains pre-configured operating system and installed software, which is used to quickly create new running instances. So in essence, this is a copy of all the configuration files, permissions, metadata of an operating system. Now, this includes any files created by the processes or the end user. Now, a snapshot of the virtual machine image can be captured at a particular state and saved to a file that can then be loaded and used on another virtual machine. Now, virtual machine images are used to create identical running instances for applications, and they are extensively used in immutable infrastructure. Now, the next question is, what is Packer? Now, Packer is a free and open source tool that you can use to create identical virtual machine images without requiring a lot of manual steps. Now, Packer lets you create virtual machine images using a configuration template. You simply declare the state of the virtual machine image that you need, and Packer will build that image for you. Now, Packer can be used for a variety of use cases. Now, these include what's called the golden image generation. Now, you can create a golden image that can be used across an organization. That will be an image which is consistent for your users, and it's easy to deploy. Now, using Packer, you can create a template that contains all of the configurations for a golden virtual machine image. Another instance where Packer is really useful is virtual machine patching. Now, Packer can be used to create virtual machine images that are used for patching any instances that are not consistent in a cluster of virtual machines, for example. The next use case is the immutable infrastructure, as we mentioned already. Now, this is using it for creating an immutable infrastructure as part of a CI/CD pipeline. Now, I'd like to have a look at in detail, or a brief overview as to how Packer works. We're going to look at how it works and how it builds images in the next sort of videos and the next steps. But in this video here, or in this section, what I'd like to do is to go over how Packer works so that we have an idea in terms of what's happening under the hood when it's building the image for us. Now, this diagram here shows the different steps involved in creating an AMI image with Packer. Now, as we'll see later on, we can use Packer to build images of different kinds, and doesn't have to be with AWS exclusively. Now, Packer automates the image building process. The way in which Packer does this differs depending on what kind of image that you want to create. Now, as I mentioned already, Packer can create images for Docker, AWS, Google Cloud, and Azure, amongst many others. Now, Packer calls these builders. Now, the process for building images for these cloud providers is very similar. But what we'll do is we'll go through the workflow for building an image to be used with an AWS EC2 instance. Now, these are called AMIs, or Amazon Machine Images. Now, let's go through each of the steps, as you can see here, that are outlined in the image here. The first step is to create a Packer template that contains the configuration for building an image. Now, this includes which image to use as a base and what software to install on it. Now, we're going to look at these steps in detail in the upcoming videos. And then the next thing that Packer does is, once we have a Packer template, it executes the build process for invoking the Packer process. So this is simply calling the Packer build and then the name of the template that you created in the previous step. Now, Packer will then run the start build process to actually generate the image itself. Now, in order to create the image, Packer needs to spin up an actual EC2 instance in AWS. In the Packer template, you will need to provide authentication credentials that Packer can use on your behalf to create an EC2 instance. Now, Packer then authenticates with AWS and then it launches the EC2 instance. Once the EC2 instance is launched, so we're now on the fourth step here, Packer makes a remote connection to the server via SSH. And then in step number 5, Packer configures the server on a provisioner, and we're going to look at provisioners in more detail. As part of the Packer template configuration, you can specify provisioners. Now, these are actions that you want executed at this stage to customize the image that you're building. Now, on step number 6, once Packer finishes running all of the provisioners that you specified in the template, it makes a snapshot of the entire virtual machine, and then it registers this with AWS to store the files for the image snapshot and also get the AMI ID for the image. So it's going to put that into your AWS console, and you can use the AMI ID to then spin up that image that you've created. And then the final step in the process is to delete the EC2 instance from your AWS account. Now, this is the process in which Packer goes through for creating an AMI image for AWS. And what we've done here is we've skipped over some important details, which, as I've said already, we're going to look at in more detail in the upcoming videos as we look at how to build an image with Packer.